This is the Business Lens, where we go beyond the headlines and make sense of the numbers shaping your money, your business, and Nigeria's economy. Good morning. My name is Divine Alex. Now, stay with me. Let's connect the headlines to your business, your money, and the economy. Now, the first headline, I'm going to be starting with the one story that could eventually affect everybody's pockets. Just when it looked like oil prices were calming down, they are climbing again. Global crude prices jumped by about 3%, with Brent crude briefly crossing the $95 a barrel mark for the first time in almost 6 weeks. Now, the reason: fresh military strikes between the United States and Iran, plus renewed tensions around the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's busiest oil routes. And you know how this story usually goes. Once oil prices start climbing, Nigerians immediately begin asking questions. One question: should we prepare for another fuel price conversation? I think that conversation, we might have to circle back to it. Now, while the world is worried about oil prices, Nigerians are still worried about the prices in the market. Now, here's where the numbers get really interesting. Nigeria's headline inflation eased slightly again in June, moving from 15.91% to 15.93% to 15.91%. I was trying to be ahead of myself. Now, sounds like progress, right? Well, not everywhere. A closer look shows that 19 states and the FCT, that's 20 out of Nigeria's 37 subnational entities, are still battling inflation above 30%. In fact, Niger, Kogi, and FCT recorded the highest inflation rates. So while the national average is coming down, many Nigerians are still asking, where exactly is this lower inflation everyone is talking about? Why is it not reflecting to some of the states? And while households are battling rising costs, businesses are still dealing with another expensive problem, and that takes us to electricity. Now, imagine trying to pay off a loan while new bills keep landing on your tables every month. That's exactly the challenge facing Nigeria's electricity sector. The federal government says it's making progress after deploying about 501 billion naira to settle legacy debts owed to electricity generation companies, and is now preparing another 729 billion naira bond in August. Government believes this will improve liquidity and restore investor confidence, but Gencos have a different concern. They say before the program is fully implemented, fresh debts could rise above 7 trillion naira. That's a lot of money. So the big question is this: are we solving the problem or simply chasing it? Which of them? Now, let's fast forward from today's electricity challenges to tomorrow's economy, taking us to the next one. Now, artificial intelligence is no longer just about robots, ChatGPT, and all that. According to the IMF, AI could actually increase Nigeria's and sub-Saharan Africa's economic output by as much as 4% over the next decade, but only if governments invest in better internet infrastructure, digital skills, and smart regulations. Now, without those investments, the IMF says AI would add just about 0.2%, very little, to economic growth. So maybe the real question isn't whether AI is coming, because it's already here. It is whether Nigeria is actually ready for it. Now, let's step away from that. And while we're talking about preparing for the future, the central bank has decided it is not taking any chances just yet. If you were hoping loans would become cheaper anytime soon, think again. You will have to wait a little longer. The central bank has kept its benchmark interest rate at 26.5% for the second meeting in a row. Even though inflation eased slightly in June, the MPC says rising geopolitical tensions and higher global oil prices could still push prices up again. For businesses, borrowing remains expensive. For savers and treasury bill investors, those attractive returns aren't going anywhere just yet. Now, and before the market, remember that conversation that we had earlier a few weeks ago about Akara roasted corn and small businesses? Well, here's one that fits right into it. The federal government has approved 3.6 billion naira to support tailors under the Industrial Training Fund Scale Up Artisans program. Beyond training, successful participants could even be linked to employers or supported to grow their own businesses. Maybe, just maybe, the bigger question isn't whether small businesses matter. Maybe it's whether Nigeria is finally starting to invest in them. And that is today's conversation. So if government is investing billions in artisans, are we finally beginning to recognize the true value of Nigeria's informal economy? We'll find out together. Now, let's head straight into the market finally. Let's see how investors responded on the stock market. Well, investors came back shopping. Yes, they did. The Nigerian exchange extended its rally on Tuesday as investors added about 307 billion naira in just one trading section, pushing total market capitalization to 159.12 trillion naira. Buying interest was strongest in real estate, healthcare, hospitality, and industrial stocks, with 34 gainers beating 22 losers. It seems confidence is, still flowing through the market, even as investors continue to balance opportunities between stocks and fixed income investments. Now, from oil prices and inflation to electricity, artificial intelligence, and interest rates, one thing is clear. The economy is changing faster than ever. The big question is, how should businesses and investors position themselves for what's next? And again, how much value does the informal economy contribute to the GDP? That's exactly what we're discussing after the break. My name is Divine Alex. Please stay with us. You're welcome back. This is the Business Lens of Rapid Television. Now, you heard when I gave the headlines, and now we are diving proper into the conversation. A few weeks ago, a simple comment about akara, roasted corn, and kulikuli sparked a national conversation. We are taking the politics out of it and asking a much bigger question. Are we underestimating Nigeria's informal economy? Because behind every akara seller, barber, tailor, mechanic, vulcanizer, food seller, and market trader is an economy that employs more than 80% of Nigeria's workforce and contributes an estimated 50 to 65 of our GDP. We even stepped out to speak with some of the street business owners ourselves to hear their story. And this is what they had to say.
Like this shop now, you see, we're paying 1.1 million every year. So, and to set up things are expensive. Like you need to have AC, good chairs. So you spend a lot of money. And roughly 5 million naira you can start. Yes, apart from shop, because all these chairs we're seeing here, one of it is 150 to 200k. Yeah, just one. And we're three, just that we're fixing the other one. So 5 million naira is not bad. Lagos Street here is 24 hours. So we work from morning till the next morning. So we only go house like once or twice a week so that we can meet up to our target. So at all, roughly a day, let's say market is good, 10k is not bad, 20k is not bad. But let's say at all, about 5k at least, 5k. Monthly, if I can save with everything I have, let me see, everything I keep, I'll be able to keep at least 30, 20k. Because there are things. We are married here. There are things here. Yeah. Because most of us that have shops, it's not our shop. And we are sincere workers. We work for these people for like 10, 15 years. So if they can come shop by shop and just find sincere people out of it, even though it's one person they assist, open a shop for him and give him, it's a good achievement. Very, very well. It's a good one. Because most of the barbers you see in the shop, they don't have their own shop. They're working for people for more than 10, 15 years old. So if you pick one person out of this shop, you go to another shop, you pick open shop for him, it's a good idea. So it can help very well. Yeah. All right.
I'm doing POS and this kind of business. For POS, I'm started with the 150,000. But this business, I'm started it from, let's say, almost about 250, which are equivalent to 450,000. Some days, you will get like 5,000, 10,000. If the market do good now, you can earn like 20,000 daily.
Now, so this morning we're asking, can Nigeria's biggest economic opportunity be hiding in plain sight? That is the conversation. And I have with me economist Abiola Adekunle from Keto Markets in studio. Good morning.
Morning, Divine.
Okay, it's good to have you here. And
Good
we
to be
also
here.
have Benjamin Awooks, who is a business founder and business consultant. Good morning, Ben. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I can. Good morning,
Okay,
Alex.
so
It's
Ben
good
will
to
be
here.
joining us via Zoom so that we could have this conversation and see where this debate takes us. Now, we're going to be starting with the debate itself. When many Nigerians heard akara, roasted corn, and kuli kuli, they focused on the politics. But economically speaking, are we underestimating the value of Nigeria's informal sector? So I'll be starting with you, Economist Abiola.
Just before we came on, we were having a discussion about how you can scale, some particular type of products in the informal sector. For example, roasting corn. And you find out that even though it is scalable, it's one way or the other might not benefit the so-called founder, okay, of the akara or the roasting of corn. Why? Because why would somebody work with me, to say, okay, Abiola's special roasted corn, and there's no way you can package and sell it after a while, because of the shelf life. So it becomes a little bit of an issue. But if you are looking at the informal sector broadly, the contribution to the GDP and the economy, I would say, is underestimated and underreported. Because whether you like it or not, when we discuss in my own line of business, when we discuss with foreign partners, with people that want to come and do business in Nigeria, to a large extent, they still categorize Nigeria as a somewhat offline country, meaning that a lot of things are still done offline that cannot be tracked properly, that cannot be measured properly. And, we're referring practically to the informal sector. But if you're talking about their contribution, it's a whole lot, because off the top of my head, without any data, I can say that for every one person you count that is in the office doing a 9 to 5, you can count up to 3 or 4 persons that are actually, or 5, that are actually outside doing the blue collar work, the vulcanizers, the people selling by the roadside, the people selling in traffic, and all manner of sales that has to do more with commissions and pay as you go, that has nothing to do with salaries.
Okay, let me come to Ben, because he has a business consultant. Now, when you look at the woman selling akara every morning, or the man repairing shoes on the roadside, are we looking at survival businesses, or are we looking at the real contributors to GDP? And if we are, can you break it down for us to have better, clear understanding about it?
That's a very interesting question. To be very specific, what we're looking at is a starting point for most people. A starting point that can be a springboard to something larger. I am aware of a lot of people who started, maybe let's say the supermarket business, for example, or some sort of maybe shoemaking business or shoe selling business or something like that. They started with one shop, one small kiosk, and they were serious with it, and with God on their side, applying the right strategy, they made enough money, either financed by themselves or external finance, to they were able to open another shop. From there, I see on the screen that you're showing us a organizer, the business of organizer. So there's some people that have they started with one vulcanizer machine. Today they have 4, situated in different places, and they have boys managing the machine for them. So it's a springboard that can take you to higher places. Some people start with these informal businesses, and then they get to a point by the time they have multiple, they're no longer on the street doing the business again. They've employed people to do it for them. People who are paying them money. Another perfect example is taxi drivers. I know at least a handful of people who started as taxi drivers, and they got to the level where they owned about 4 or 5 cars, and they were not even on the street again. People were on the street for them. So it's a springboard, like I said. In terms of contribution to the GDP, the stats are very obvious. We know that a lot of Nigerians, majority of Nigerians, are in the informal sector. Contributes, depending on the methodology you use, you can say 39% to 56% of Nigeria's GDP. The nominal figure, or at least the Naira figure. If you assume our GDP, I think the last figure was almost 400 trillion Naira. That would put you somewhere between 170 to 200 trillion, and 170 to 200 trillion Naira. That is the size, the estimated size of the informal economy. So it's a large aspect of Nigeria's economy, and even at that, there's still a need, to sort of formalize it a bit, because there are other areas. But I think I've done justice to your question.
And now my question, one more question is this: can thousands of micro businesses collectively create more jobs than one multinational company?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
It's always better. The way capitalism is structured, there's a space for small businesses, but the bigger the better, because as you get bigger and you drive more revenue, control more market share, you have leverage, and that leverage allows you to employ more people. That leverage allows you to provide them the benefits that the informal sector cannot provide them, like pensions, like insurance, like mortgages, 401ks, or whatever sort of retirement savings plan that you can structure, for them. So it's definitely better. It's not ideal to have the informal economy as the larger aspect of your economy, or the larger employer of your labor force. That's not the ideal thing, but it is a step that every nation, every first world country today had to go through. Every single one. Nobody skipped it. So understanding that this is a process, understanding that we need to make it better, because I think some people feel like we should be satisfied, with it. No, we shouldn't be satisfied with it. We should see how we can improve it better. We should see how we can make as many informal businesses formal, because that's the ultimate goal.
All right. Now, I want us to make this a little bit practical, because, the controversy that came out when the whole Akara Kulikuli and corn thing came out, like I said, it was more of the politics part, and maybe we were not looking deeper to see how we could actually tap into the benefits that these businesses hold. Now, to be more practical, now we have a lot of people who are, on the streets doing lots of different businesses, ranging from the corn to the shoemaker, to the vulcanizer, to the akara fries, and every other small businesses. How, like the practical steps that we can actually scale up these businesses? Maybe you could start with corn or any of this, just pick any of these businesses and give us practical steps in to actually scale up these businesses, just in case we have someone who is seeing, watching us and listening to you, so that they will understand better how to go about scaling up their business.
Well, that's a very technical question, and I have to say that an interview like this is not going to allow me to do justice to that. But at least I can say a little.
Yes, you can try.
It's very important that when you're running a business, that you're committed to that business, and then you're committed to satisfying your customers. So if you're selling something, you have to be committed to selling products that deliver the value that you have promised to deliver. If you're providing a service, you have to be committed to ensuring that your clients, are satisfied with that service. And you have to be prudent with your costs. You have to be careful that you're not spending too much on costs. Then from time to time, as the business grows, you need to be able to invest back in the business.
Okay.
A lot of people see business as a way to meet day to day. And that is fine, but if you find yourself making a little bit more money, do not rush to upgrade your lifestyle. There's an opportunity for you to invest back in the business. Like I gave an example of people who started with one taxi car. I think this is very, very rampant. Very, very, very rampant. A lot of people started with just one taxi car, one bus. Today they have 4 or 5 buses, and they're not even on the street again driving buses. They now collect money every week. So if you have that kind of mindset, it can only get better. At least this is why I can say for now, anybody who needs a more detailed solution to scaling, they can come and consult.
Okay, let me go back to you, Mr. Biola. Now, how much of Nigeria's economy actually depends on these businesses?
Well, before I go into that, I wanted to add to what he said.
Okay, go ahead.
The thing is, there are some businesses that just can't be scaled. because when you talk about scaling, one of the first things you look at is, the whole idea of scaling is you multiply whatever you're doing across a larger terrain, a larger customer set, bigger volumes and all that. So if we look at, let's say, frying akara or corn, for example, these businesses are called self-employed or sole owner businesses for a reason. And the reason is because there's a need for that person to be there for that business to continue. The moment that person is not there, then we now start asking about quality control. We start asking about automation. We start asking about processes. You see some fast food chain, why they can scale is because they've done a lot in their processes and automation. This is the way we cook our rice. There's a cookbook. This is the way we fry our chicken. There's a recipe. Then they can multiply that and standardize whatever the procedure is. But when you look at corn, for example, there is no way you can scale it. Whatever scaling you're thinking about means that you will still have individuals, manning those places. And the taste can never be the same because there's a way about it that somebody has to be involved, to process it and do all that. And by the time you consider employing somebody to man another constant, you find out that the amount you are paying the person, by the time you do plus and minus, it doesn't even make any sense anymore. And that person, there's nothing stopping him from going to do it. Why? Because the entry level, the level of education you need to do such is very low. We're not talking about high level of education. So when you want to scale, technology has to be involved at some point. Automation has to be involved at some point. Otherwise, you cannot scale properly. So some business will forever remain the way they are. The best you can do is to say maybe you want to sell a franchise. You know how many people will sell franchise of what's called frying akara or something. So coming back to your question, how much of the economy is built on the informal sector?
Yes.
I would say for Nigeria, pretty much a lot. I don't have the specific data, but I'll just make a guess and say anything between maybe 20 and 30%, or even crossing towards 40% of the economy is built on informal. And the reason why is because how many companies do we really have that are 9 to 5 in Nigeria? If you look at Nigeria as a country, the services we demand, the type of things that we ask for every day are usually from the informal sector. You want to sew your clothes, what you're putting on. You talk to a fashion designer or a tailor. You want to do your nails, you talk to a nail tech. You want to do your shoes, you talk to a shoemaker. How many of the demands I have as a person daily comes from the formal sector? You talk about maybe banking, we understand that. Apart from that, you can see that not so much is coming out. So over the years, the informal sector in Nigeria has grown bigger because any country that wants to reduce the informal sector space or dependency on the informal space has to industrialize. The bedrock of industrialization is power. So if anybody is even having the mindset, okay, let's move a lot of these informal guys to the formal sector, where is the power to do that? You can say the power has improved, fine, but is it perfect? No, it's far from perfect. So we might still see the informal sector and the dependency of the economy on it growing over the next few years until Nigeria decides to say, okay, we want to actually industrialize. There is no first world country right now that did not at some point in their history industrialize, started producing, then absorbing a lot of the informal sector guys and converting them to formal.
So at what point does an artisan stop being seen as a petty trader and maybe we'll start looking at them as entrepreneurs?
First of all, they have to, one way or the other, be registered. Secondly, they have to have some form of employment, opportunities there. Because if you say you're an entrepreneur and you're not recognized, like from the government's point of view, you're still using your name, Abiola Adekunle, to collect payment, to do payment and everything. It's still a little bit, informal, if not a whole lot. So the point in which they become formal is the point where they become recognized, by the government. You can say, oh, this is the address, this is where you can get more information about them. If I ask you about maybe the person, maybe your car, the person that pumps your tire, what is his name? You might not know. You know, so, but if I ask you, what is the name of your bank? You tell me immediately. You even give me the account number, though I will not send any. You know, so at the end of the day, you need to find a way to make sure that these entities are known. These entities are recognizable, they have addresses. One way or the other, there are employment opportunities. Then we have started entering into the zone of being formal.
Okay. Now, I want us to take a swipe back to one of the headlines I read earlier, which talked about the fact that federal government has just approved 3.6 billion naira to support tailors under the ITF Scale Up Artisans program. Now, let me come to you, Ben. Does this signal a shift in how government now sees artisans and informal businesses?
This is not the first time that the government is providing some sort of funds to, support those in the informal businesses. Usually when things like this happen, the big question is, is this money actually, going to get to tailors? That's the first question. And the second question is, what's the spread? How many tailors will they get? Could it just be that a couple of tailor organizations that are close to the government will collect it, and then the tailor at the side of my street that is not part of any tailor organization, how would the money get to? These are the questions that we ask. But looking at tailoring, I think the government should look at industrializing tailoring, because tailoring is fashion and clothing, apparel production. It's not rocket science at all. It's not something that is so niche like akara or so. We have got to a point in this country. We have a lot of people that are good with sewing and all that. So why are we not seeing factories? Why are we not seeing factories springing up? Why are we not seeing all that? Sharing this 3 billion to few tailors is changing nothing much. To be very honest, this is a government. This is an act. This is a socialist act, and I feel maybe to give them the benefit of that, they are trying to do something in the short term. This is not a long-term solution. This is not a long-term solution by any means. The government, what we need to see from the government is significant moves to gather capital, to create factories, invest in factories. Some of these guys that are independent tailors, they stand a better chance working at a big factory somewhere, where at least they can give them pension, they can give them insurance, they can give them some of those benefits that come with working with an organization. It's better off, it's better for them. And even when you're working with an organization, nothing stops you from still sewing for your neighbor and getting paid. Nothing stops you from still sewing for your auntie and getting paid. So that is what I expect the government to be doing. This is a way to socialists to create any real.
Okay, so while you were talking earlier, you mentioned something about tailor union, and that took me, it sent my mind to wonder. Now, if we have unions of that can cover every informal sector, let's say Akara Friars Union, Roasted Corn Sellers Union,
and Senior Roasted Corn.
So, do you think that this can actually help some of these businesses to actually look towards attracting
more government? Adding to what Ben said, first of all, is I completely agree with him, because I've always been someone that have clamored that we should have industrial clusters. This 3.6 billion, instead of, I can tell you for free that a lot of that money will be going to training, so-called training. They are just fizzling into the air. Let me quickly give you a short, story. Last year we went to Kuje prison, December, to go and give blah, blah, blah. We bought stuff as friends. We got there. When we got there, the controller sat us down. Luckily, the controller for Atingogalada was around also. He was on seat. And the guy started educating us. He said, see, he took us around, showed us all the skill acquisition area. He said, all these things you guys brought is good, though. I don't want to discourage you guys, but it's more or less a waste. All the teletrolls, all he said, because in the next couple of days, these things are gone, and we already have these things. He said, but if you can buy one or two of the equipment that these people need, it will turn their life around. By the time some of them are being released, that can revolutionize and even change their family and their generation, because you bought maybe just one sewing machine. So the focus for the government should not be training only, but the sustainability of the whole project. So it will even be better if they have garments in the 6 geographical zone, garment what's it called, companies, or you gather these tailors together, have an industrial cluster, make sure in that cluster power is 100%, internet is there, so that people can say, oh, I'm going to Aba. Aba has a federal whatever cluster. They will perform, they will give me whatever I want. You can even do it in such a way that you will make all these things completely free, but the accounting will be central. Meaning that if I come to your shop, you are in the cluster there, you're sewing, everything is provided for you. You are not the one that will collect money from me. You only invoice, they will collect, they will take their whatever their pay is, and they will remit the rest back to you. You will find that if you do this alone and you have it in the geopolitical zone and you have 1,000 tailors in those places, in the next 4 or 5 years, you will be exporting, because what will be coming out of there will be so much that Nigerians might not be able to consume it on their own. Now, going back to the union people, union is an aftermath of creation, meaning that if the elements don't exist, the unions are useless. Now, if you're saying that union for tailoring and all that, you'll find out that there is no active participation in a lot of these unions. Why? Because they feel that the unions, one way or the other, are biased. I'm just trying to pick my words.
Okay.
So you'll find out that once everybody is not in it for the same purpose, it becomes very, very watered down. So you might find out that you have so many unions of tailors. This one is claiming that they are the original. So if they cannot speak with one voice, at the end of the day, they cannot approach the government and say, please give us this, please give us this. At the end of the day, that will benefit them. So the first thing is, the union have to try to even harmonize among themselves. We cannot have so many unions. There was somebody, if transport, for example, if you're doing transport within a state, you have so many tickets. This one will say this is their name, this one will say this is their name. You might end up with 7 to 8 tickets every day. And that is why those unions cannot be bigger than whatever they are. But by the time you unionize the unions, let me use that, then you find out that they'll be stronger at the end of the day.
Okay. Now, I want to also get your thoughts on that, Ben.
Well, I won't for the tailors, I would not call them I won't call them unions. I will call them associations, because they are not unionized like this. They're just trying to clamor for the government to support them. But broadly speaking, I really support what Mr. Biola said about clusters. Although I would prefer, like setting up companies that would employ these people, but the clusters is also a good alternative, so that at least we can take a step further in terms of industrialization, in terms of record keeping, centralized accounting. At least we know what these people are doing, and if the prices will come down, when you cluster people like that, the prices will come down to be more affordable. We'll produce a lot. We would have more to export, So it's a win-win for the economy. But like I said, my first option would be to set up garment factories, because we have so much labor. We need to use
exactly so much labor.
We need to put this labor to use. All of them can become SME owners and all that. That's not how you build a $1 trillion economy. At some point, they have to give up their SME dream when somebody gives them a good offer, to work for a garment factory.
Yes.
That's how it was done in the countries that we look at, that we want to emulate. So that's where I pitch my things.
And before you make a stop at that point, at that place. Now, I have one more question, right? Most of these businesses are seen as survival businesses. So at what point, does it stop becoming, survival business and maybe transit to success stories? Ben?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
All right. For the businesses to move towards, like you said, a success story, we have to approach industrialization. We have to make moves, genuine moves that take us towards industrialization. I like the fact that we mentioned these tailors, because that is one area that is overdue for industrialization. There are so many other areas too. We have a lot of people in Port Harcourt, we call it garrison. I think in Lagos, they call it computer village. All these guys that work with the soldering irons to repair phones and all that. All those guys, at least they've learned a lot about the average Android phone or the average iPhone. There's nothing wrong with setting up a factory and then using this labor that we skilled labor, adding more, training them, and then we start assembling phones in Nigeria. So we need to really make use of our labor. If they remain as small businesses, not every small business can scale. Even in the same sector, even in the same line of business, if let's say 15 businesses are doing the same business in a state or in a local government, it's not all 15 that can scale. At the end of the day, if a few scale and consume the rest, that's how capitalism works. So we really have to try to industrialize. We really have to make moves to industrialize. We can't just be satisfied with these niche small businesses. They have a place. There will always be a corn seller. There will always be an akara seller. All these things will always be there. But that 60% that the informal sector is taking, we don't have to leave it that way. We have to see how we can reduce it. Let formal be 60% and let informal be 40%. That is my own view. If we don't make moves towards industrialization, it will be hard for all these small businesses to grow from survival businesses to actual scalable businesses that improve the lives of the of Nigerians long term.
Okay, thank you so much, Ben. Let me come back to you, Mr. Biola. Should we? A lot of times when we hear akara, I think that is one of the things that caused a lot of debates. And it was giving fire back to back on X. If you even open some of these platforms, you see. And even me, I even took some stray bullets when I went out to the streets to have some conversation with some conference. The moment I asked, they asked me, "Did Tinubu wife send you?" You understand that kind of conversation. This is not akara.
Yeah.
Now, should we stop looking down on this petty trading and start seeing it as one of Nigeria's biggest economic assets? And how?
Well, it's a thing of the mind, first of all. Anything that has to do with labor, because there's this adage that says that that was it adage again about labor, that there is I remember it anyway, but the whole idea is that yes, there's dignity in labor. Whatever you're doing in this life, as far as you're not stealing, you're not killing people, you're not committing a crime, then you shouldn't be looked down on. I remember when we were growing up, my dad used to tell us about the story of Teju, that these guys were people that used to go into houses there to pick on people's feces, but they used to cover their faces, and they would pick those feces, dispose them and everything because of the toilet technology at that time, latrine. Yeah. So but when they're having the biggest parties, these guys are there with their face open, but people don't know them. So the adage came, then that the money that is made from feces does not smell, So at the end of the day, if you're not committing a crime, there's no reason why it should be looked down on. A friend of mine traveled to the US, I think about 10 years ago. He won a visa lottery, went to his family. He called me, he said to me, here, everybody respects everybody. You're an MD, you respect the guy that is shining your shoe. He said, and everybody, the way they approach you and talk to you, they tell you with respect, irrespective of what level you are. Even if you are just somebody selling in McDonald's, and a millionaire comes, he still, talks to you normal. So it's a thing of the mind. It was even saying that if somebody has to maybe do something for you, let me not say that on TV. Now, it's a thing of the mind. So as far as we stop worshiping money as a country, we will learn to appreciate everybody's role in the economy. There's this stuff around Abuja that they keep saying that they did not build Abuja for the poor guys, because practically there's no bus system, there's no bus stop system, and the truth is that the rich cannot live and survive without the poor. It's a two-way thing, because who will wash your clothes, who will take care of your house, the security guys, all these guys are so at the end of the day, we just have to re-educate ourselves, redirect our minds and be able to appreciate that everybody is a part of
that they make. Okay, let me take your last words, especially as a business consultant and founder of your consulting company. Now, what business advice would you leave out there for everybody who is contributing, to the GDP or to the economy on the streets? Ben,
I would
can you hear
say,
me?
can,
Okay,
I
please go
can.
ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I, I would
Ben, are you still there?
say, keep at it, keep diligent in what you do. Like I said earlier, uh, I am still here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. I think I'm back. My network is stable. So, like I said, the small businesses springboard. We can set you up for things that are bigger. So we just have to keep being diligent, keep working hard, keep delivering the little value that we're delivering for our customers and clients. Focus on that, and that will open doors for more things.
That will open doors for many things. Thank you so much, Ben, for that powerful, statement. And thank you to Economist Abiola. I think it is also okay to note that when we look at the woman that is frying akara or fries, you see that they also patronize a lot of other people. You might think that maybe you are somewhere in the market and you own a very big shop and you sell food things ranging from oil, ranging to the tomatoes, to the beans that they even use. So you see that without these people, there's, somehow they also contribute to the success story of your business. And that is where we're going to draw the line now. But before we go, it's time for our business word of the day. Today's word is GDP, because I know that you heard us say it over and over again. Now, GDP stands for gross domestic product. Simply put, it is the total value of all the goods and services produced in a country over a specific period, usually 1 year. Now, think of it as Nigeria's economic report card. When people say the informal sector contributes 50 to 65% of GDP, they are saying that businesses like the akara seller, corn, barber, tailor, mechanic, vulcanizer, market trader, and thousands of other small enterprises produce a huge share of the country's economic value. So the bigger the GDP, the bigger the economy. But what's even more important is whether that growth improves people's lives. Now, maybe the lesson today isn't whether someone starts with shoemaker, roasted corn, or a barber shop. The real lesson is this: every big business starts somewhere. The real challenge is whether Nigeria is creating an environment where small businesses can grow, employ more people, and become tomorrow's big companies. And that's where we'll leave it today. Thank you so much for watching Business Lens. Keep supporting local businesses, keep asking the business questions, and remember, every number tells a story. My name is Divine Alex. See you on the next edition of the Business Lens. Bye for now.